First off, this is the second in a series of videos speculating on the newly announced structure decks. I recommend clicking here to watch the first part where I talk about the new Dark Magician structure deck. Afterwards, it'll automatically lead you back here. With that out of the way, let's talk some more details. A few days ago, Konami announced they'll be doing official English releases of Yu-Gi-Oh! Products in the OCG starting in November 2023. And the first products they'll be launching are two structure decks.
Structure deck, Rise of the Blue Eyes, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Official Card Game Duel Monsters Structure Deck, Illusion of the Dark Magician.
Rise of the Blue Eyes and Illusion of the Dark Magicians. The main question in most of our heads is if this means there's going to be new support for both of the archetypes. While absolutely nothing else about these sets is confirmed, it has an insane number of implications. I personally do think we'll be getting new support from them. Konami is going to need a cover card to put in front of these boxes. While they might do something like just use the Dark Magicians and probably a form of Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon as the cover cards, I don't think this is likely. Those cards already exist in those OCG countries and have been reprinted multiple times by now. It's also extremely rare for structure decks to not feature a new boss monster card, but I go more into detail on that in the previous video I mentioned. So let's just say, hypothetically, that there are absolutely no new cards in any way. Then what? Honestly, that could still be pretty good for us. This still most likely means reprints of cards like Magician's Souls, Soul Servant, Blue Eyes Alternative, and other cards that are too expensive right now for what they are worth. And let's say, somehow the situation ends up being even worse than this by these structure decks not ever releasing in the TCG. Here's the thing about that. Even if we don't ever get an official release here, these cards are still confirmed to be released in English. This means there will be people selling these reprints on TCG Player, eBay, and other secondhand shops. And even before we get the official TCG release, if we ever do, of course. And sure, the shipping from the sellers could still be expensive as it is from overseas, though honestly it would probably still be cheaper considering some of the high demand cards could be in common rarity or other cheaper printings. Not to mention, these cards would be guaranteed in every single structure deck, meaning there's not really any sort of short print cards. And since we're talking about importing these cards now, this brings me to my next point. Some of you guys might not know, but OCG cards are much higher quality than TCG. What do I mean by this? Well, the cardstock is thicker, and the print on the cards don't get as scratched up or rubbed off as easily. The colors are also deeper on the card's borders, and the actual art on the cards seems more accurate to the artist's original drawings. And it's hard to explain, but even the holographic effect on cards are just prettier in general. Not to mention, there shouldn't be any censorship on these cards, and this is a pretty big deal because remember, they're in English. We might finally be able to get Maji Maji Magician Gal or other things like that we were never able to get before in English. Whether or not they'd be legal to play is still up in the air, most likely not, but it still is a thing that could get us closer to getting some cards we've never had. Another pretty interesting thing is the text layout in the OCG and TCG are a bit different. The OCG has effects laid out in a more organized way that makes everything easier to read and understand. It's possible these English OCG cards won't be like our current system, but rather like the OCG system. And the best part yet, I've alluded to this and it's pretty obvious, but I haven't said it straight out yet. All of these things apply not only to these structure decks, but all future English OCG releases. I don't know if these English OCG releases will also get regular Japanese booster packs, but if they do, we'd get all of the above mentioned benefits as well as an earlier release date for those of us that would like to import them. Sure, the cards wouldn't be legal right away, so we'd have to wait for the TCG release before using them in tourneys, but here's the thing. Japanese style packs often come with different rarities of the same sought after cards. So assuming these OCG cards are legal for TCG play, I know they might not be, but still mentioning it here, that means we'd have other options than having to put a mortgage down on our house just for a playset of Pot of Prosperity. Of course, this is all speculation, but it's based off of two facts. English OCG releases are going to happen starting in November, and OCG releases are different from TCG releases, arguably better in every single way. You get less commons, the packs are cheaper, and you get the same amount of rare cards or sometimes even more. So this really can mean we'll also benefit from these releases even if they never officially release here. That is, unless Konami doesn't foresee the number of TCG players importing these English OCG cards. The demand could easily outpace supply, sadly creating an inflation on the prices of these OCG releases. Yeah, that's also a real possibility. Because of this, I could see English OCG cards being banned from TCG play, though I really hope that's not the case, because I'd love to import some of these cards for my deck. Anyway, I've already talked about what might be in the Dark Magician structure deck, so here's a quick rundown of what might be in the Blue Eyes structure deck. Blue Eyes decks have always done a pretty good job at going into rank 8 Exceed plays, but oddly enough don't have a rank 8 monster of their own archetype, and no Legendary Dragon of White doesn't count. So while a Blue Eyes Exceed monster is possible, I don't think that's what we'd be getting, at least not as the cover card of the structure deck. I believe we're more likely to get a fusion or ritual monster. If it's a fusion, I believe it would be one of three things. The first being a fusion with Dark Magician. We did get a Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, so it would make sense if we get a Blue Eyes White Dragoon at some point. And maybe even a Blue Eyes and Red Eyes fusion, that'd be interesting. Anyway, a Blue Eyes White Dragoon type of card would also give the two structure decks some promotional crossover, and Konami would love if we all bought 3 copies of both decks. The second possibility could be a Blue Eyes and Albalisk the Tormentor fusion. The God cards have their own archetypes now, sure, but nothing really feels complete on any of them. Though I don't know how I'd feel about this one, it'd probably be pretty hard to make a decent deck out of these two monsters. But that would give us the option to summon Obelisk with fusion deployment, and that sounds pretty fun. The third possibility would just be another generic Blue Eyes fusion, whether it's 2 heads, 3 heads, 4, you get it. And in my totally not biased opinion, what would be the most interesting is a ritual monster. It does seem like Konami is almost trying to turn both Blue Eyes and Dark Magician into ritual decks. Chaos rituals, to be specific. And while my next point uses a Dark Magician card, I think it's still valid to mention. Illusion of Chaos has a line of text that makes me think we will get more ritual monster support. The specific line I'm talking about is the following. You can reveal this card in your hand, add 1 Dark Magician or 1 non-ritual monster that mentions it from your deck to your hand, then place 1 card from your hand to the top of your deck. Now, why would it have the clause of not being able to add a ritual monster that mentions Dark Magician? You might say it's so that Illusion of Chaos can't add itself. That makes sense, sure, but just about every other card in the game prevents looping with itself by naming itself in its effects. At the time of writing, there's only 2 ritual monsters that mention Dark Magician, that's Illusion of Chaos and Magician of Chaos. There's absolutely no reason to not be able to add Magician of Chaos to your hand with this effect, unless it's future-proofing itself to not loop with other ritual monsters with similar effects. I could totally see a ritual Dark Magician girl that has a similar search effect to Illusion of Chaos, so that way you wouldn't be able to loop them with each other. And before I turn this video into another Dark Magician video, I'm bringing this up because Blue Eyes also has Chaos ritual monsters. Though currently they don't have any that would add consistency the way Illusion of Chaos does. So it might be a possibility that Blue Eyes gets a card similar to Illusion of Chaos, since Dark Magician and Blue Eyes cards often mirror each other. Something else I'm hoping for the Blue Eyes deck is to completely steer away from the card True Light. Blue Eyes already has boss monsters and other support cards that give them protection. It would be terrible if the new support focuses on searching or utilizing True Light in some way. There's absolutely no reason for an archetype to play a card that blows up your own field without any other sort of benefit. Could you tell I play Dark Magician? I just want to spare our Blue Eyes players from having to play a trash card like that. The only way a card like that would be useful is if you can activate it from your deck to your opponent's field, where you can then blow it up to set on your own field afterwards. That's the only way I could see worth having effects like that.